Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever in the world you are. Welcome to this program. Today I'm going to talk about uh, Finance Minister Mthuli Ncube's 2023 budget, worth Zimbabwe dollar 4.2 trillion dollars, which is about 6.5 billion US dollars. Most of this budget is going to be goggled up by wages, and there'll be very little money left to maintain the present infrastructure, let alone invest in new ones. This budget is not going to kickstart Zimbabwe's economy, and Zimbabwe's economy has stagnated for years. Unemployment has soared to 80% plus, and has been up there for the last since the mid 2000s. So there is nothing in this budget to kickstart the economy. Nothing, absolutely nothing. The minister said that the economy is going to grow by 3% in the coming financial year. How such a slow growth rate is going to achieve the promised upper middle income status by 2030 beggars belief. The maths simply do not add up. Zimbabwe's present income is 1,737 US dollars, according to the World Bank. And an upper middle income nation has got to have a per capita income of 106,000 US dollars per annum. So if you write the equation for it, to get to the 106,000, that is going to equal the current earning of 1,737 multiplied by 1.03 raised to the power n, where n, if you work it out mathematically, n is equal to 150 years, which is the time it will take to grow the income of 1,737 pounds to US 106,000 pounds, sorry, dollars. So you can see immediately that this does not add up at all. The minister tried to portray, together with the president, tried to portray this picture that Zimbabwe is on course to become an upper middle income nation. The truth on the mathematics on the ground tells their own story. And that picture has been depicted in a cartoon in the New Zimbabwe, which I think says it all. The present economic situation in Zimbabwe, as portrayed by Minister Mthuli Ncube and the president, is a far cry. That cartoon portrays the true picture. We are just a nation, a one-roomed house balancing precariously on the edge of a cliff. A picture says says it all. It's worth 1,000 words. But we need to go back to this issue of uh, Zimbabwe's present economic situation. We really cannot carry on the way we are. Zimbabwe needs to change. Many people have said, I present a problem, but I never present a solution. The solution I've always presented it. Zimbabwe is a pariah state ruled by corrupt, incompetent, and murderous thugs. And as long as Zimbabwe remains a pariah state, there will be no meaningful economic recovery. That is a fact. And I think that is what we've got to, to deal with, and if we're being honest with ourselves. We need to end the corruption, the mismanagement, the lawlessness, and the only way to end it is for the country to implement democratic reforms so that we've got free, fair, and credible elections. And by having free, fair, and credible elections, we will be able to elect competent leaders. There is this is not rocket science. We know what the problem is. The corrupt and incompetent dictatorship that has ruled the country for the last 42 years. The solution is there, the cure is there. Stop the rigging so that you elect a competent government that is accountable to the people. So that if they fail, they're removed from office. Zanu PF does not have the divine right to rule the country. The mandate to rule a country should come to from the people through free, fair, and credible elections. That is the basis we've got to go back on. We had the golden opportunity to implement those democratic reforms during the 2008 to 2013 GNU. Sadly, the individuals, Morgan Tsvangirai and his MDC friends, who were given that task to implement the reforms, sold out. They failed to implement even one meaningful reform in the 5 years of the GNU. That is why we are in this mess. And if we are serious about implementing reforms now, we've got to accept the MDC, which has morphed to Triple C, are not going to implement those reforms. They've given up on implementing reforms. In fact, since the GNU, MDC Alliance, now Triple C, they have been participating in these flawed elections, knowing fully well that Zanu PF will rig them for the simple purpose of getting a share of the few gravy train seats they knew Zanu PF was giving away to entice the opposition to participate. The present situation we're faced with, the ideal situation would have been that we do not hold the 2023 elections until we implement the reforms. But that is not going to happen. Even with the best will in the world, it is too late to implement reforms now. And as we know, Zanu PF is absolutely determined to carry on and hold the elections. And as long as, and they expect that Triple C will participate as usual and give them legitimacy. SADC, which is a regional body, advised Morgan Tsvangirai in the 2013 elections that they should not participate in those elections without implementing the reforms. SADC had influenced at that time because remember, SADC was the guarantor of the 2018, the 2008 to 2013 global political agreement that gave birth to the GNU. And as the guarantor, they would have said the elections are not free, fair, and credible, and therefore then deny Zanu PF legitimacy. But when they advised Morgan Tsvangirai not to participate in those elections, and their advice was ignored, I think that is when SADC decided that to wash their hands of Zimbabwe, Pontius Pilate style, and they've been endorsing ZANU PF rigged elections ever since, pretending they are substantially, to quote their reports, substantially free, fair, and credible. I think they were doing it just to punish MDC for having failed to implement the reforms. But to have punished MDC since 2013, now we are getting on to 2023. That's 10 years for a decade. And remember here, they're not just punishing MDC, they're punishing the whole country because the whole country has paid the price of ZANU PF remaining in power all this time. And therefore, then to punish the whole nation for the transgressions of just a few corrupt and incompetent individuals, and to punish them for more than a decade, I think is unfair, totally uncalled for. What we want from SADC next year is to judge those elections on the basis, on the evidence on the ground. It is already clear that ZANU PF is rigging those elections because they failed to produce even something as basic as a verified voters roll. How can you have free, fair, and credible election when you don't even have something as basic as a verified voters roll? So we expect SADC observers to judge the elections on the basis of what they find on the ground. If they turn around and say those elections were not free, fair, and credible because you failed to produce something as basic as a voter's roll, that makes sense. So if they were to do that, that will force Zimbabwe to go back into another GNU. The subtle difference now is this time we will see to it that the democratic reforms are implemented in full so that the next elections will be free, fair, and credible. And thus, Zimbabwe will finally move out of this situation where we are stuck with a dictatorship and be able to have a government that is elected by the people and can be removed by the people through free, fair, and credible elections. No one has the divine right to rule Zimbabwe. The only mandate to rule the country should come from the people through free, fair, and credible elections. That is the basis to which we'll go. And I think that will finally launch Zimbabwe in a position where we can now finally get competent leaders who will be able to deliver this nation from the economic crisis that we are facing right now. Like I said, we are sitting on the cliff edge. And we cannot deny that we are the present situation is untenable. We cannot continue uh, in the present with the present situation we are in. Zimbabwe needs to implement the democratic reforms so that we can have free, fair, and credible elections. And only then can we start to rebuild this nation and have hope in the future. Thank you very much, and good night.